I went to a meeting and I met various people at that meeting. Met a guy who was making £3 grand a month. Met someone else who was making £6 grand a month. That was Alan Moffat actually, was speaking at that meeting. And I thought that was amazing, that people could be making that much money. And so I started to build a network shortly after that. A couple of months after that, I started sponsoring people in the business. And I did it part-time. And then that was kind of at the end of the year. And then in January of that year, and the beginning of next year, my wife left her job and she did the catalogues in school hours, and she made £1,000 a month just dropping catalogues through people's letterboxes in school hours. So that gave us kind of massive belief in the business. And at the same time, I started to sponsor people into the business, and we went gold in 4 months. We then went to what is known as bronze executive in 20 months. And then I left my job, and that was back in 2001, and I've not worked in a job since, and I've no intention of ever working in a job ever again. Last year, I've just done my accounts actually for 2013, because we're all like a year behind. And that year I earned over 70 grand. I haven't done this previous year yet, the one that's gone. But we now have a residual income, a royalty income of about 75 to 80 grand a year. And we expect to be able to double that in the next few years. So what I'm going to show you is not my story. We've had lots of things along the way. We've had, I think, 18 overseas conferences since we've been in the business, which is, if I added it up, it comes to about 140 grand in terms of what they're worth if you paid for them yourself. And we've had a brand new car, and best check is about 7,400 for 4 weeks. So we've done okay, but what I'm going to talk about tonight is not our story as such. I might tell you bits of it as we go through. But what I'm going to talk about is one of the 10 steps. And this is something which I think is one of the most important things that people should do. And one of the things that I got advised to do very early on in the business, people said to me that you need to read some books. And I did take that advice on board. So what I'm going to talk about is personal and professional development. Now, when I joined the business, people said to me that you need to read some books. And I was already persuaded on that, because in the other network that I was in, which was an American network, I did read a lot of books. And I had it on a standing order. People used to send me books every month, and tapes. It was cassette tapes back in those days. And I'd already done quite a lot of personal development, but so I already understood the importance of it. But when I came into Clean Easy, I used to go to a meeting near Doncaster, and there was a table just like that one over there. And I used to go every 2 weeks to that meeting, which was run by Gary Watson and his upline. And I got a book at every meeting that I went to. So every two weeks I would go away, read the book, and then I'd get another book. And then when I was in my car, I used to work in insurance, and in my job, I used to drive about 1,000 miles a week. And I was in like corporate sales, and people have often said to me, did that give me a big advantage coming into the business? And the answer to that is not really at all. But if there was an advantage, it was because I spent so much time in my car. And you might think, well, what difference would that make? Well, the main difference that it made was because I used to spend about 8, 9 hours, 10 hours a day listening to people in community talking about how to build a business. And I used to listen to people like Gavin Scott, Chris Mason, Paul, Rob Foster, all the big earners, John Stephen, all the big earners in the business. And I used to have the stuff on in the car all day long. And I used to absorb the information, and I used to listen to Jim Rohn and people like that. So I learned huge amounts while I was doing my job. So that wasn't very much. But we say it's the most important step. But we also say, it's an interesting observation, that quite often it's the most neglected step as well. Now, some people here might just have joined just to make a bit of extra money, about 50 quid a week or 100 quid a week, which is kind of where we were. But if I said to you that there's a few things that you could do that could turn £100 a week into 100 grand a year, would that be of interest to you?
Yes.
You sure?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So even if you didn't want to get to 100 grand a year, what if by doing a few simple things, you learning a few simple skills, let's say you went from 50 quid a week to maybe 2 grand a month, or 2.5 grand a month. Because some people don't need huge amounts of money. Some people just want to work flexible hours around their family, like Sylvia was just talking about, And maybe if they could get to 2.5, 3 grand a month, but not have a boss, not have a kind of dead-end job to go to, that would be pretty good news. So, but one of the most important things I believe that makes the difference in your income is this, is personal and professional development. So, why is that the case? The reason why it's the case is that over the years, we all develop belief systems, which means we develop images of ourselves that we believe we fit. And then sometimes that's negative. Sometimes all we're really experiencing is garbage in, garbage out. And if we've had like negative programming for many, many years, either through our education, through our people we work with, if you've been bombarded with negative for 30 years before you get into Clean Easy, a lot of people come in and they're carrying a lot of negative baggage, which won't really help them. So I believe that if they get into personal development and professional development, you can dump the baggage basically and make progress in the business. So it is the most important step. Now, it also should cover why to and how to. And what I mean by that is we do spend a bit of time on how to do things in the business. We teach people a system and we train people in systems and we run workshops on systems. And all of that's really, really important. But what's more important is not the how to, but the why to. And I always believe that the why to comes first and the how to comes second. In other words, if you're talking about self-motivation, that's more important than how to do something. So the motivation comes first, and then you learn how to do it. Now, so what is personal development? Here's some things you might want to consider. I believe that if you see people who are successful in Clean Easy, you'll find that there's a common thread with all of them, and that is that they have a positive vision about how they want their life to look in 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now. And it's very, very important that you develop a vision of how you want your future to be. And this is the why to. This is really fundamentally important. It's like a foundation stone in your business that if you don't spend any time planning your future, why would it turn out dramatically different? People spend more time planning their holidays than they do the rest of their lives. And I would say one of the prerequisites of success in the business to any level is that you develop a vision of how you want your future to look like in 6 months from now, a year from now, 3 years from now. So it's a good tip to visit your future now in your mind. Because it might be difficult for some people to get really passionate about putting these things out. Who gets really passionate about putting their catalogues out? Well, some people do actually. Some people really love it and enjoy it. I think that's great actually. But I couldn't honestly, truthfully say to you, when I first started, that I felt really passionate about going out with my catalogues after I'd already done 12 hours in my day job. But I was passionate about my future. And I was passionate about the fact that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life working in the job that I was working in. So if you can't get passionate about the tasks in the business, like picking up the phone, speaking to people, or putting catalogues out, at least get passionate about your future. Because if you get that in place, you'll make much more progress in the business. So without that, the action won't follow. But if you've got passion about your future, you will then take the necessary action that's required. Because the reality of our business is that most of the things that you will ever need to do are actually easy to do, but they're also easy not to do. And if you get passionate about your future, you're more likely to take the necessary action. I also think that people should take risks. This may scare some people, but it doesn't mean the financial risk, like some of you may have done before you got into Clean Easy. You don't have to go to the bank manager and borrow 100 grand or anything like that, but you do need to take risks, I believe, in terms of getting out of your comfort zone. Because usually, when people come into the business, some people come in and they have, like I said, challenges with negative programming, or maybe they've got some baggage. And sometimes building a business, if you're in a difficult financial position, is kind of daunting. And you have to get out of your comfort zone to make that happen. You have to do things which make you feel uncomfortable. And a lot of people will say to you, oh, don't worry, just do it at your own pace, just do what you feel comfortable with. But the reality is, if you keep doing that, you won't make progress. So I believe that you have to take risks in the sense that you have to get out of your comfort zone. And then you also have to assess your progress and take some time, work with your upline to reflect on your results and just see, are you on track, are you off track, and see if you can get some more awareness about what you're doing in the business. But it was interesting listening to you just now when Sylvie was talking about online marketing, online sales. I don't know, has anybody read this book? This is a book you can get from Knowledge is King. Yeah. Dave's read it. Okay, I'm in the Knowledge is King Book of the Month Club, which is not a bad idea if you're doing personal development. And they send me these books every month, and it just drops through my letterbox, and then they take the money off my card. But this is a book called How Social Networking Doubled My Business by someone called Natalie Healy, and this arrived at my house about a week ago. And I would say, I would recommend this book to you actually, because you just heard about Sam getting £4,000 of orders, was it, in 4 weeks online, which is phenomenal. But I would read this book because this lady's built a business which pays her over 100 grand a year using social media in this country. Not in California, in this country. So, the name is Natalie Healy. How Social Networking Doubled My Business by Natalie Healy. She makes over 100 grand a year in this country. Now, the reason why that's important, I think, is that you have to be informed so that you can inform other people. But if you're not informed, how would you find out? If you just didn't know, then you'd become less valuable in the marketplace. So one of the aspects of personal development is to be aware of what's actually going on. So you all need to be on that Facebook group, like Gavin's Facebook group where I saw the post about Sam, but also in Andy Boswell's group. That's how we stay informed about what we're doing in the business. And just find out what's going on in the business and find out what skills you need to develop to take advantage of the opportunity. Because I know some people just haven't got a clue about Facebook. I've introduced a lady today who didn't have a Facebook account before today. She's got one now because I won't let people join without a Facebook account, which is my start on. So it's very important that you observe what's actually going on in the business so that you can take advantage of the opportunity. And I also believe that as you develop more skills, what it really means is you develop more self-awareness and you get to understand more about yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, and how you can develop in the business. So part of it is knowing yourself, knowing what you're good at and what you're not so good at. And I don't worry about people's weaknesses. I always get people to play to their strengths, but it's a good idea to know where you're strong and where you're not so strong, because that will help you in the business. So that's what we call personal development. But the most important thing is the one at the top, which is you have some kind of vision for where you want to go with your life and get passionate about that. So, next question is it hard work? Interesting question. Is building a clean, easy business hard work? What do you think? No? No. I don't think it is really. I remember having a conversation with a guy when I first joined the business, and I said I thought it was quite hard work, and he laughed. This guy who was a senior distributor, and he laughed, and I thought maybe I need to change my thinking. But I've never truthfully found that it was particularly hard work. But here's a picture of some people carrying some bricks on a building site, and I've got a story about this. There was this guy, he goes across this building site, and all you can see is rubble everywhere, and all these people carrying these bricks, and he doesn't know what they're doing, so he's going to ask them what they were doing. And he goes to the first person who's hauling all these bricks. He says, "Excuse me, can you tell me, what are you actually doing?" And this guy was a bit surly, he was a bit grumpy. He said, "I'm carrying all these bricks, what does it look like?" So undeterred, he goes to the next person, and he says to the next person, "Excuse me, can you tell me, what are you actually doing here, what's happening here?" He said, "Oh, I'm building a wall." And this guy was a bit more kind of placid, a bit more kind of laid back, seemed quite relaxed about it. He said, "Yeah, I'm building a wall." But he was different to the first guy. And then he goes to the third person, and he says to the third person, "Can you just tell me what you're doing?" And this guy was whistling and very cheerful in what he was doing. And he said, what are you actually doing? And he said, "Oh, we're building a church. It's going to be fantastic. We're going to have a huge car park. We're going to have stained glass windows. We're going to have a crystal spire. We're going to have people coming from all over the country. Thousands of people are going to come and see our church. It's going to be fantastic." So there you have three people doing identical work, the exact same job, but three completely different levels of attitude. And it's interesting to find out why three people doing the same thing would have completely different attitudes about the task. And the reason for that is that the first guy, who was a bit fed up because he was working really, really hard, was just focused on the task itself, which we call like the harshness of the moment, which is real in many cases. It's not something which we should pretend doesn't exist, because I can remember days in the early days of business of going out with my catalogues. I remember one day it was really pouring the rain, and I was trying to write in my book, and I hadn't worked out that you could put the book in a snappy bag at that stage, and the pen wouldn't work, and the pen kind of disintegrated. The book disintegrated in the rain, and I was like really fed up about, what was I doing the business for? People weren't putting their catalogues out, half the catalogues were soaked through, all this kind of stuff, and I was caught up in the harshness of the moment. So you probably asked me a question that night, was it hard work? I probably would have said yes. But in reality, that's what I call a pessimistic attitude, where you're just focused on the task. But the second guy that was building the wall, I call a more kind of like a professional attitude, because his attitude was, if there was work to be done, he was going to just get on and do it. And you'll have lots of people join your clean, easy business who are like the second guy, and you'll also have people like the first guy. And when you get the second guy, you'll be really pleased that they're not like the first. But they'll only go so far. And I don't believe you can be really, really successful with a kind of attitude which says, well, if there's work to be done, I'll get on with it. And people that come into our business that have that kind of attitude have been characterised as kind of steady eddies. And they're fantastic, actually, because they put their catalogues out, they go back 3 times and all the stuff we teach people to do, and they just kind of get on with it, which is really good, but they'll only go so far with that. But the third guy that described in church is what I call having a purposeful attitude, or, to put it more accurately, an attitude which is full of purpose. Because he wasn't focused on the task, he was focused on the end game, the outcome of building the church. And that's really what we have to do in the business. We have to not focus so much on the immediate task, because then you get caught up in the harshness of the moment. We have to focus on why we're doing it, or we have to focus on the meaning of the work. What does the work in Clean Easy mean to you? That's the most important thing. So if you have to pick up the phone and speak to 50 people on the phone, and some of them are complete boneheads who you don't really want to spend your life talking to, it doesn't matter if you focus on the outcome. Does everybody follow this? Or if you've got to go out and put catalogues out in February and it's really cold, and it's easy to do and easy not to do, and you haven't got a purpose, you probably won't do it. But if you've got a purpose, if there's a reason why you're doing that work, it becomes a lot easier to make progress. So that's the 3 levels of attitude. And that's basically a personal development process. So the more personal development you do, the more clarity you will get about the work. So if there is hard work to be done, it's here. It's on your goals or on yourself and your reasons why. So I don't think building a clean, easy business is particularly hard or particularly difficult or complicated, really. But I do think that it's hard sometimes for you to know why you're in the business and what the best outcomes for you and your family are. But I would put your focus and energy there, because that's where you find the deepest motivation. So a person with a purpose will make progress on even the roughest road. A person with no purpose will make no progress on even the smoothest road. And we have a pretty phenomenal road in Clean Easy at the moment, because we've got people buying products online. You've just heard about someone getting 4 grand worth of orders over 4 weeks. We have people that do 1,000 a week in our team as well online, which is fantastic. So we've got an opportunity with over 2,000 products, I think now, and we've got products which are clearly, evidently, there's huge demand for our products. So that's a pretty smooth road, but you will need to have a good, strong purpose if you're going to make progress in it. So what are your goals? There you go, I'll put that one in twice, just because it's very important. What are your goals, and why are you building the business? Because this is a quote from Wayne Dyer. He says that when you have goals in place, dormant forces, faculties and talents come alive, and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. Now my question to you is, what if that's true? What if you set some goals, and in the course of your pursuing those goals, you grow and you develop as a person, and you discover that you've got more ability than you first realised. Because I promise you that's exactly what happens to people in our business. We have people that come into the business lacking in confidence, lacking in skills, lacking in knowledge. Maybe they've had some difficult things to deal with before they get into Clean Easy, but they come into Clean Easy, and if they do the personal development, quite often they literally discover themselves to be greater people by far than they ever dreamed themselves to be. And I can give you numerous examples of that. My upline, Gary Watson, used to work in a factory steaming a fish for about 150 quid a week on a production line, a shift factory labourer on a production line, but he now has a residual income of probably 100 grand a year, which probably means he's discovered that he can do things which he never would have dreamed of, certainly when he was stuck on the production line in the fish factory, I would imagine. So it's true, but without the goals and the purpose, he probably wouldn't have had enough meaning in the world. So what is your vision of your future? It's certainly the case that when you've got a vision of your future, you can become more positive, more motivated, more determined, and more likely to achieve your goals. But you need to have some kind of vision of what you want your life to look like in the next 5 years. Because if you don't have that, do you remember who was at the showcase? Who was at the showcase at the beginning of January? Lots of you at the showcase. Okay, well, there was huge excitement in the showcase. Quite rightly, it was a fantastic event. But if you don't have some goals and some vision about 2015, by now, a couple of months in, it starts to look a little bit like 2014. So that's a trap that people fall into. So that's personal development. Sorry, can I get some more water? I think something like this. So the second part of the equation is professional development. So the first thing, personal development, really deals with why to do stuff, your motivation, your vision for your future, and things like that. Thank you very much, Steve. Cheers, thanks. So the second part, professional development, is more to do with how to do things like skills. And for years people said, oh, well, it's really simple. All you do is you put catalogs through people's letterboxes, and then you teach other people how to do the same thing. It sounds really simple, doesn't it? And I suppose you could summarise it like that, or characterise it like that. But in reality, I don't think that's true. I think there's more to it than meets the eye. So here's some things that you might want to consider. The first thing people need to get good at is how they manage themselves. Because if you're saying to someone who's used to working in a job, or they're used to fixed routines, and they come into our business, and now they've got to develop things like time management, where they've got to fit loads of other disciplines in, like going to collect catalogs, deliver catalogs, going to deliver orders, customer service, all this kind of stuff. Basically what happens is they've got to learn how to manage themselves, because time management is really just self-management. That's what it is really. So they also need to give fantastic service. Now, if we're talking about, everybody understands customer service. So if you've got like loads of orders from your catalogs or from your online selling, you understand how important it is to give fantastic customer service. Everybody knows that. But when you're building a network of people, when you're building a team of people, that still applies, because the only thing that really changes is that your distributors become your customers. That's actually how it works. And a lot of people don't understand this about our business. A lot of people think it's like, you build a team and you get people to work for you. It's never like that. It's always the other way around. You get paid for the service you give to the people in your organisation. So customer service in this context is your distributors become your customers. And if you think about it like that, that's what we get paid for. That's how we derive residual income. So when we talk about service, that's what we mean. So our distributors become our customers. You also have to find solutions to challenges, because when you're coaching people, we do a lot of coaching on Skype, and we meet regularly with our people, but you can't expect your team members to work out all the answers. So we have to work out the answers and suggest solutions for them. That really requires you, that's a skill. That's a skill because, you've got to build trust with your new distributor, and you've got to suggest things that will help them do well. Embracing change, this is really why I brought this book, Embracing Change, because for lots of people this would represent a massive change to how you operate your Clean Easy business. But I do recommend you get the book, and I do recommend you embrace change, as some people already asked, in terms of selling product, but that book has massive implications about how we build networks, because you can apply the same thing to sponsoring as we're currently doing to retailing. So how we use resources is very important. Are we plugged into all of the Facebook groups? Are we getting the right information? Are we informed? And can we develop other people in our business? And can we give them effective direction? See, that's a professional skill. They don't teach you that. And just to say, oh, it's just about putting catalogs out, teaching other people how to do the same thing, that's kind of a ridiculous statement, because I believe that people come up against walls and we have to show them ways around the walls and over the walls, if necessary, through the walls. But we have to find solutions, so we have to give people direction. So it's about working with people to help people achieve results, and that's a professional skill. And it's not really sufficient to say that it's just about putting catalogs through mailboxes. It's not really what it comes to. So skills and knowledge. Here's 10 books that we recommend that people read. And someone said to me the other day, how quickly should they read them? Which is a good question. And this is like step 2. I'm sure you've all read lots of those. I'm sure lots of you have read these books. But who's read GoPro? Who's read the GoPro book? So most of you read the GoPro book. What about Beach Money? Who's read Beach Money? Okay, lots of people read Beach Money. Well, what I would say to you is, if someone said to me, how quickly should you read those 10 books? I would say as quickly as possible. But to give you an idea, let's say you read, they're not long books like this book here, which I got through the post. You can read that in about 2 hours. You could read it in no time at all. And you can in some of those books as well. But let's say someone said to me, we should get people to do it in 6 months. I said, well, maybe, but that's kind of like, I don't like imposing targets on people. I'm not in favour of that, really. But I mean, certainly, you can certainly do one a month. If you read a few pages a day for a month, you'd get through all those books. So one a month. So if you did, let's say, in your first year of team building. Now, if you just joined the business and you come tonight to find out, can you make some money? The answer to that is yes, you can make plenty of money. But if you want to develop yourself and get some more skills and more knowledge of the industry, I would recommend you read some books. Now that's just our 10, and if you ask other people here, there's some very successful people in this room, they'd probably give you a different 10, and that's fine. It doesn't matter because there's no right and wrong answer. But I know that if someone reads these 10 books, we actually give them 10 questions to answer on each book, because unlike when I joined the business and people said to me, just read some books, no one really told me which books to read, no one told me what to look for and what I was supposed to be doing. But we give people structured training on each book, and there are key learning points in each book which we think are really, really important. And I know that if someone read all those 10 books over the course of a year, and they could answer the questions on each book, why is that important? It's not important to me. I already know the answers. The reason why it's important is it changes their self-image. It changes how they see themselves. In other words, to give you a specific example, who's learned to drive? Okay, can you remember your first driving lesson when you got in the car with your driving instructor for the first time? How confident were you as a driver? Let's say out of 10, how confident? Who was like a 9 or an 8? Some of you were. Some of you were probably driving before you went up in class. But most people, I think if I think back, I was probably only like a 3 or a 4, maybe. And most people's confidence levels when they start something is very, very low. But as with anything, if you practice and you have someone to show you how to do something effectively, your confidence level goes up, doesn't it? Now, in this example, if you learn to drive, let's say over 3 months or 6 months or whatever it is, like if you had 20 lessons, whatever it might be, by the time you get to the finish of the process and you pass your test, I wouldn't say you're totally confident. I remember in my first year of driving, I had about 6 accidents in London, but I was a lot more confident than I was when I started. And that's the key to understanding the process of building, because if you read those 10 books and you can answer those 10 questions, your perception of yourself changes. Your self-image becomes a lot stronger, and you start to think of yourself as, if not an expert in the business, certainly more confident and more knowledgeable than you were in the beginning. And that's why it's such an important process, because the first thing we need to change is we need to get rid of self-doubt, because nearly every distributor that I've ever met in the Clean Easy program at some point has experienced self-doubt, and they don't really believe that it's going to work for them. And that's one of the ways that you can deal with it. If they read the right books and they get an amount of knowledge, they can believe they can make it go. So the question is not what do you want to have. The question should be, what can you become? And what is important to you about your future? And if you set some goals and you put a program in place for helping you achieve personal and professional development and more skills, you will basically attract more money. The money follows the skills. It's always in that order. So the 4 stages of learning, you've probably all seen this. Most people come into the business and they have these weird ideas about the business, that the business is about catalogues. Well, it's not really about catalogues. So they're unconsciously incompetent, so they don't know that they don't know. And that's really interesting. And then we work with them for a bit. Maybe they come to a meeting, maybe they come on a webinar, and then they begin to realise actually it might work. Actually, there might be people making a bit of money in this Clean Easy thing, but they still don't really get it. They still don't really know that they can make money in it. But they now see, maybe they meet, let's say, Dave Burtwhistle, or Ram Lang, or Sylvia Lang, or whoever it might be, or Sue Burris, or Peter and Myrna, whoever it might be, and they might think, oh, they seem to be doing quite well, but they still don't necessarily think that they can do it. But they are now consciously incompetent. So they now know that there are other people that are successful, but they don't know yet how to become successful themselves. And if they keep coming to meetings and they keep going to workshops and they keep learning and they get more skills, eventually they can realise that they are becoming competent in the business. And if you go back to the driving analogy, that's like when you know how to drive the car, you've maybe had quite a few lessons, but you still have to think about it. So you still think, I'm going to put the gear stick into 3rd gear, so I'm going to put my left foot on the clutch, and I'm going to move the gear stick, and then everything will be fine. The revs will sound okay, but you're still having to consciously think about the process. Until finally, if you do enough of that, you can do it without thinking about it. So as tonight, you all drove here tonight, and probably some of you had the radio on, probably some of you on the telephone, probably some of you were thinking about all kinds of stuff, and you can't remember anything about the journey because you're now unconsciously competent, you did it without thinking about it. And I believe that building a Clean Easy business is just the same. And I believe that anybody can learn the skills, anybody can be shown the skills, anybody can be steered in the right direction, anybody can be shown how to develop, let's say, a gold distributor business, a bronze exec business, an SED business. The only question is how long will they give it and how will they work on themselves. But anybody can go through that process. There's nothing mysterious about it. I believe anybody in this room can become successful in the business, but they will have to do the personal and professional development. Finally, you can't manage what you don't measure. So we have 10 steps in our program, and we have 3 levels of what we call competence, and we get people to go through each level, and we give them a certificate which recognises their efforts at personal development. So as they read the books, they do Skype calls with their upline asks them the questions, and their upline signs off the certificate. And when you give them the certificate, they begin to realise that they know as much as some of the successful people in the business, and some of them, when they go through those competence levels, begin to realise that they know more than some of the very successful people in the business. So that's really useful. But that's basically how we do it. We break it down into bite-sized chunks, 1 step at a time, and they get competence level certificates up to level 3. I'm not going to go through all the detail of that. And then when they've done those 3, we have a leadership program. We have leadership level 1, leadership level 2, leadership level 3. So it follows on from that. So it's very structured. So it's just like if you went to go to do a degree or some kind of training course where you've got a structured program of learning, we apply the same principles to the business because we think it's a professional business. And for those of you that you all said you've read GoPro, what's the subtitle of that book? 7 Steps to Becoming a Marketing Professional, isn't it? Well, this is how you do it, basically. So finally, if you're interested, here's where we run our workshops. And so if anybody wants to come to the Northwest, it is this weekend, isn't it? Yep, so this weekend in Bolton, and you can buy the ticket at that, where is it? Northwest one. The second from the wrong there. You just log onto that website and you can pre-book, and you'll see Carolyn Blacksall, Abigail Coakley and myself will be running training at that event. So it should be a really good event. But anyway, the most important thing is if you don't go to that event and you can't go, that's absolutely fine. But whatever you do, I would advise you to begin some kind of program of personal and professional development. And if you treat the business like an opportunity to make a lot of money, even if you just join to make a little bit of money, just learn the knowledge anyway, because it pays you a lot of money. Thanks very much.
Well, absolutely brilliant, guys. How fantastic was that? I think we should give Neil another round of applause. Come on, then.